I was working on this wheel horse garden tractor, trying to finish up the project, but the recoil starter went bad. There was a bad spot in the rope, so it wouldn't retract anymore. This is part 2 of a multi-part series. In the last video, I took 2 starters apart, and I started putting one good one together out of the best pieces. I got the spring in place and lubed up. That part should be done. Now I'm looking at this part next. It shouldn't have that lip on there. It looks like the hole was worn out. It has a lip on this side too. This washer has to be a little bit thicker than the middle of this cup, but with the burrs on there, it's not going to work. This big thin washer goes on the rope pulley to protect the aluminum. It goes down first. The little washer goes in the middle, and this medium washer goes on top. Yeah, that burr sticks up higher than the small washer, so that won't work. I should be able to stack those washers up, clamp it tight with my fingers, and that cup should spin freely on there while I'm squeezing it. I need this spring out of the way. It looks too big anyways. I'll discuss that later. I'm going to use this grinding wheel with the curved nose on it. I can't use the side of the wheel because the burr is down in a pocket. Whenever you change the wheel, it might not be running true, so you can use this block of carborundum that comes with the grinder kit. It's harder than the grinder wheel. Use it to true up the wheel, then it won't bounce on you. It looks like I can do this side with the same grinder wheel. I was worried that might not reach down in there. That grinder finish is a little rough. Sandpaper or emery cloth could work. I'm going to use this old sharpening stone on this one side. That'll help keep it flat. My old stone don't fit in this side. I'll use the end of a cylindrical grinding wheel. Then clean up both sides with the sandpaper. There needs to be no burrs and no sharp edges. Now when I stack up the washers and squeeze, I can spin this thing no matter how tight I squeeze it. That'll work. It works because this little washer is slightly thicker than the middle of that cup. Now I want to look at this clutch spring. I call it a clutch spring because it's meant to slip under certain conditions. It should grip on the outside of this piece, and it does now. Since I deburred that hole, the spring can go down farther so it can grip better. It's still too wimpy. It should be able to support the weight of this piece, but it slips right out. I'm going to see if I can bend these fingers in a little bit to get it to grip better. Nope, that's not working. I'll try a little more pressure. That's not working. I'm going to use some pliers. That's good there. Maybe a little bit too tight. If it's too tight, it'll wear out the spring too much. I think that's what I want. If I put all the parts together, it should turn freely except for the drag of that clutch spring. That spring looks pretty big. I don't think that'll work. It's supposed to hook on that round post. There's only one of them. In operation, the clutch spring is supposed to overcome this little spring, and this is too much force for that. So I want to use this little spring. It's not original either. I think this came from a generic pack of springs and I cut it to length. There's a little divot stamped by that hole. The spring's supposed to lay in that low spot and stay out of the way. And that spring should have just enough force to return that cup each time. This rope pulley is held down by this hardened washer, so I'm going to put some grease in there. It only needs to be on the outside. The inside will be screwed down to that post. Just make sure the rope pulley moves freely when you hold the washer down. This clutch spring rides on the hardened washer. And it grips on the back of this cup. I'm going to put some grease where the spring rides. That makes it easier to turn. Hope it works okay. The clutch spring has to hold the cup in place when the rope pulley starts moving. The fingers have to be in place before the cup goes down. These fingers only go in one way. If you put them in backwards, they stick out like that, and you'll never get the thing back together. I'll put some grease on those. Now the cup goes on, but only after you put the spring in place. It has to be hooked on that post. And when it's on there, the little spring should move it back when you turn it. The small washer goes in the middle, and the medium washer goes on top. After the bolt's tight, the cup should move freely under the washer. Well, it retracts pretty good. Seems a little sluggish. Yep, that's not working right. The fingers are not coming out. The clutch is not holding the cup back when the rope pulley starts turning. That does slip a lot better with the grease on it. I'm going to tighten up the spring fingers a little bit. That's a little better. I'll try that. That don't work yet. I can simulate how it's supposed to work if I put my finger on the cup to hold it back. That's what the clutch spring's supposed to do. Now I gotta figure out why the clutch spring can't hold the cup from turning. First, I want to make sure excess grease is not making it too sluggish. I'm going to clean the grease away from anything that touches the cup. But I still want grease on the spring fingers, 'cause that rubs constantly. Well, that didn't work. Now I'll clean the grease off of the spring fingers too. That's not working either. I'm gonna walk the dog and think about it. This time I'm going to use carburetor cleaner so there's no lubrication on the spring fingers or the cup. I want to see that clutch spring grab. I'll use WD-40 to get the grease residue off the washers. That'll leave a little lubrication for the cup to turn. That's not working. Yeah, the clutch fingers don't grip the cup very well. I suppose I could bend the fingers some more, but I already moved them some. Don't want to break any. There's a big wear mark on that cup there. Now we want to look at the old one. That looks like it's always had grease on there. And that fits pretty tight. Yeah, there's a big difference between those two. This part's tapered, so I'm going to measure toward the bottom where I think the spring fingers touch. That looks like about 1 inch and 80 thousandths. This one looks like about 1 inch and 65 thousandths. So there's 15 thousandths difference. This one's damaged on the outside. I think I can fix that. If I use this one, I want to bend the fingers in some more. This damage on the outside looks like it's from force put on the finger. And with that slot cut out, it made a weak point so that could bend. I worked on deburring this hole. That should have told me that it was worn out. This center hole measures 530 thousandths. That's 30 thousandths over a ½ inch. This other one measures right on a ½ inch. That's what it's supposed to be. So this one's worn out by a 32nd of an inch. The washer that was in there is probably worn too. This one measures 5 thousandths under a ½ inch. But this one measures 12 thousandths under a ½ inch. So I want the good washer, and it'll match up with the good hole. And there's not much excess clearance there. That'll keep the cup centered in the clutch fingers, so that'll work better. If you put these two together, you can see the big gap in there. So that's how much that was moving around. These two parts are worn out. I'm not going to use them. Now I need to fix this and use it. I want to bend this back where it belongs. These pliers barely fit in there. Maybe too wide. These needle nose vice grips fit in there, but they're not very strong when you're trying to twist something. These pliers feel more stable. The bottom jaw sticks out more, so if I turn them over, yeah, that fits a lot better. And I can probably just squeeze here and get most of it. I want to see the same angle on these three parts, so I think it needs to bend a little bit more. Now it's angled outward, so I want to bend it towards the center a bit. I'm trying to get those all the same. So if I can put this part in each one and look at the angle, those look about the same. The metal's torn right there in the corner, and it's separated a bit. I'll mash that down a little bit. I remember seeing this situation before, so I went back and checked. I already fixed this once. It was about 4 years ago in a video called Wheel Horse 704 Cleanup number 20. I straightened it up at that point, but with that notch cut out of there, it don't have the strength to stay straight in operation. If this works right, I'll probably weld that crack this time. These clutch springs aren't the same anymore since I've been bending on one of them. I'm going to use the larger one. That's probably closer to the original size. It should fit this cup that's not worn undersize. I got to get that little spring in position again. When I pull out on the rope, the fingers should go out. And when I release the rope, the fingers should go back in. If the engine starts, the ratchet teeth may push these fingers back in, so that needs to move easy. That looks good. The in and out action should happen no matter how far the rope's pulled out. The clutch spring thing is holding on to the center cup, so the center cup is the last thing to start moving. That's as far as I'm going this time. Everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Next time I need to take it apart and weld the cracks on that cup, because that don't look like it's going to last very long. I expect it to be done by now, but sometimes it takes me longer to figure out the problem. Alright, that's it.